On this Thursday night, Nova Scotia's heartbreak before the holidays. Families of 6 men lost at sea face an agonizing wait.
One of the mums said, "I know that he may not come home the way I want, but somebody please bring him home."
The investigation into why the scallop fishing boat sank. Climbing COVID-19 cases, new calls for tighter restrictions in Ontario as Alberta plans a field hospital. Close to being cleared for takeoff, Boeing 737 MAX jets could be back in Canada's skies soon. Plus, consequences and crashes. Millions of Americans caught in a monster winter storm.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight in Nova Scotia, where families who make their living at sea are facing a devastating loss. All 6 crew members on board the scallop fishing boat that went down in rough seas on Tuesday morning are now presumed dead. The men were on their way back to port in Digby, their boat loaded with scallops, when something went wrong. The company that owns the boat says the crew did not issue a distress call. Only one body has been recovered, and the search for the others has been suspended because of bad weather, prolonging the agony for their families. Ross Lord has our top story tonight.
Weather is working against efforts to recover more evidence and return victims' bodies to their families. A stormy forecast forced RCMP to suspend Wednesday's operation.
We have an impending snowstorm, which has made it, dangerous for us to continue.
Making the anguish even worse for families of the 6 scallop harvesters.
One of the mums said, I know that he may not come home the way I want, but somebody please bring him home. And that alone would be some closure.
Michelle Nickerson, a mother of 2 who lost her husband, posted a gracious message, thanking searchers and supporters. Our family thanks every one of you for your prayers. She added, "Rest peacefully, boys, wherever you lie tonight." The boat owner, Yarmouth Sea Products, says the crew had been fishing for 4 days. The company suggests stormy conditions forced them to head home. They'd been traveling for 5 hours before their boat, the Chief William Solace, went down.
The community right now, I would say, is in a state of numbness. There's no other words to express it.
For investigators, the focus is shifting from what happened to why. The Transportation Safety Board has arrived to inspect debris and other evidence being stored here at the Bridgetown RCMP detachment.
2 inflatable life rafts. But at this point, we've only had a quick look at them. We have not been able to positively confirm that they are from the vessel.
The sinking of the Chief William Solace is the latest in a long line of tragedies at sea in Nova Scotia, including the Miss Alley capsizing in 2013, which killed 5 men. Safety advisors insist, since Miss Alley, awareness and protection have improved.
We've come up with new technologies and safety equipment to keep aboard the vessel.
The Safety Board says the use of protective gear and a boat's condition are included in every investigation. With Christmas approaching, fundraisers are underway to help families of the 6 men, some organized by friends, others by complete strangers, looking for ways to help communities and a province plagued by tragedy. Ross Lord, Global News, Hillsborough, Nova Scotia.
As we approach the holiday season, the second wave of COVID-19 keeps taking a toll across this country. More than 7,000 people have tested positive for the virus just in a single day, and more than 110 Canadians are reported to have died from it today. Ontario reported the most new cases of any province today, more than 2,400. That is a daily record, and 23 more Ontarians have died. This is the path Ontario is on when it comes to active cases. More than 17,400 Ontarians are dealing with the virus. Of those, 263 are extremely ill in intensive care. That is the highest number of COVID ICU patients in Ontario since April. 172 of those people are on ventilators. The group representing Ontario hospitals says it is near the breaking point and wants immediate action taken. It's asked Premier Doug Ford to impose, as a minimum, a 4-week lockdown in regions with the highest infection rates. In a statement, the Ontario Hospital Association says we are now in the holiday season, and if members of the public choose to ignore public health measures and gather outside their households, the consequences risk overwhelming Ontario's hospitals. Premier Ford said today he welcomes the Hospital Association's input. He says his government is listening to public health advice and that everything is on the table, including potentially setting up what Ford calls interim hospitals to help relieve the pressure.
When I talked to a doc yesterday, and he told me that he was talking, he had to cancel a surgery for a 42-year-old male patient that has cancer. That we just can't keep going in the way we're going, and because the ICU beds are taking up from COVID patients.
In Alberta, hospitals are already overwhelmed. That province has called in the Red Cross to help set up a field hospital in Edmonton. The Chief Medical Officer of Health calls it a precaution. Heather Yourex-West looks at what could be coming as Alberta heads into the holidays.
It's a building known by many names, officially called the Universiade Pavilion, dubbed the Butter Dome because of how it looks. Soon it will house a field hospital, though Alberta officials aren't calling it that.
AHS is also working with the Canadian Red Cross to set up an alternate care centre at the Butter Dome on the University of Alberta's campus.
Whatever you call it, the 100-bed facility is being constructed because of COVID-19. Alberta has seen the number of COVID patients in hospital double every 3 weeks since early November. On November 2nd, there were 119 patients in acute care and 28 in ICU. 6 weeks later, those numbers grew to 610 and 139. Alberta Health Services is now adding another 2,250 acute care and 425 ICU beds. But there are fears that even with new restrictions, these beds could soon fill as well.
We can expect hospitalizations and intensive care unit admissions to continue to go up for the next several weeks here in Alberta, even if the daily numbers begin to plateau. So we have to prepare for what we know is coming.
Alberta's health minister says the field hospital is just contingency planning.
We'll continue to make sure that not only are we making sure we have capacity for our current forecasting, but of course we want to take steps to develop contingency plans as well, which is only prudent planning.
Now, there are signs that recent restrictions in Alberta are working, but if people gather next week over Christmas, all that progress could be wiped out.
My concern is that in about 2 weeks, I suspect that we're going to see another surge similar to what happened after Thanksgiving.
A post-holiday bump could be more than enough to push a struggling health system over the edge. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
In Quebec, elementary and high school students are home for an extended winter holiday as new restrictions take effect there. Schools are closed until January 11th in Quebec, and more regions are now in the red zone, meaning restaurant, dining rooms, bars and gyms are closed, and all non-essential businesses must close for 2 weeks, starting on Christmas Day. Things are different in Canada's smallest province, Prince Edward Island. With just one confirmed new case today, the province has decided to ease restrictions. Starting tomorrow, households in PEI can have up to 10 visitors. Indoor dining can resume, and gyms and museums can operate at 50% capacity. A second vaccine, the one made by Moderna, has moved a big step closer to authorization in the U.S. An independent committee is recommending the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approve the vaccine for emergency use. More than 17 million Americans have now tested positive for the virus, and more than 317,000 Americans have died from it. As Jennifer Johnson reports, if the FDA agrees, millions of doses of the Moderna vaccine could be shipped as early as this weekend.
For the second time in just over a week, a panel of scientists advising the U.S. Food and Drug Administration recommended another COVID-19 vaccine, this one produced by Moderna, which is 94% effective.
We found no cases suggestive of anaphylaxis to mRNA 1273.
The FDA is likely to take quick action, as it did with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The last shipments of the first round of that vaccine have been delivered, and millions of healthcare workers and nursing home residents are being inoculated. Hospitals have even found extra doses in the vials.
This is really a cause for celebration. It is, really the weapon that we needed to fight this pandemic.
For the first time in the U.S., a healthcare worker in Alaska had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine and was hospitalized for observation.
You need anything else?
As deaths skyrocket, many states are in crisis. California's governor has activated the state's mass fatality program, putting 60 mobile morgues on standby. Overworked nurses in Southern California are threatening to go on strike Christmas Eve. In Los Angeles County, ambulances are waiting up to 6 hours to offload patients at hospitals.
People are going to die that don't need to die.
The governor of New York is warning he may have to shut down his entire state within a month if this surge continues.
If we're smart, we can slow the spread. If we slow the spread, we can avoid any more economic shutdowns.
It's a scenario playing out across the country. Death, suffering, and millions losing their jobs and businesses.
I took every bit of money that I had and dumped it back in here to keep it alive, and I can't.
U.S. jobless numbers Thursday hit their highest level since early September as Congress continues work on a $900 billion economic aid package. Leaders say they will not leave town for the holiday break without a deal. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Change is in the air for the Boeing 737 MAX. Coming up, what needs to happen before Transport Canada clears them for takeoff? Boeing's 737 MAX aircraft is one step closer to returning to Canadian skies. Transport Canada has approved design changes, and further approvals are expected in January. All 737 MAX jets were grounded after 2 of them crashed, killing 346 people, including 18 Canadians. As Abigail Beeman explains, families of the victims say the changes aren't enough.
When I went to the crash site, I was not even able to recover the remains, so which was again the worst thing that had happened to me.
When the Boeing 737 MAX crashed in Ethiopia after takeoff in March 2019, Manan Fadia lost 6 of his family members.
Even somebody offers me like $100 million, I wouldn't go into that plane.
But following in the footsteps of the U.S. and Europe, Ottawa has now taken the next steps to allow those planes to fly, approving design changes, with the 737 MAX expected to be flying early in 2021.
It means that we accept the modifications, but we also have some Canadian modifications.
Transport Canada is requiring more changes, training, and maintenance, namely allowing the pilot to override what's called the stick shaker warning system. In both deadly crashes, the pilots weren't able to, as faulty software sent the plane into a nosedive.
The pilot, who would be trained on this and be very much aware of it since they're flying a 737 MAX, would be able to quickly and easily turn off the system, take control as a pilot, and fly it safely.
We're all very disappointed.
Robert Clifford represents many of the Canadian families in a case at the U.S. federal court in Chicago.
There's no transparency to the decision making, and that's a special concern because as of today, we've yet to receive the final crash report out of Ethiopia.
To know that the people with authority could have done something, that's the part that's so troubling. And we have a plane right now, the MAX, that has all these grandfathered hazards on it.
Asked to respond to the family's concerns, Boeing declined an interview, but told Global News in a statement the lessons learned from the crashes have reshaped the company, and they're working with regulators to safely return the planes to service. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Safety is behind the Canadian military's plan to replace its entire fleet of Polaris aircraft, including the plane the Prime Minister uses. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson has news about this tonight. Mercedes.
Donna, the government is finally replacing the fleet of old, inefficient planes that fly the Prime Minister, transport our troops, and conduct air-to-air refueling of Canadian and coalition fighter jets. The 5 33-year-old planes were originally flown by Ward Air in the 1980s. Even acting now, they'll likely be 40 before they're retired. The age of the aircraft means constant and expensive maintenance, as well as dated infrastructure. The Prime Minister's plane has no Wi-Fi, one phone that often doesn't work, and pieces of plastic sometimes fall off the inside of the plane when it lands. A senior government official says the government plans to buy 5 to 6 new planes to replace the fleet. The government expects to spend between $1 and nearly $5 billion on the project. They will be bought from a commercial aircraft manufacturer like Boeing or Airbus. Donna?
All right, Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa, thanks. The federal government is providing temporary debt relief to Newfoundland and Labrador for the troubled Muskrat Falls hydroelectric project. The financial help saves Newfoundland and Labrador from borrowing $844 million in payments. The province's projected deficit already stands at $1.84 billion. A senior government advisor is also being appointed to oversee the project's financial restructuring. A major change in finances is needed to help prevent electricity rates from nearly doubling by 2022. The Muskrat Falls project was approved in 2012 at a cost of $7.4 billion, but the price tag has ballooned to $13 billion because of delays and cost overruns. The calls to cancel Christmas still ahead, while medical experts say easing holiday restrictions in Europe is a bad idea. In Britain, more than 138,000 people have been vaccinated for COVID-19 so far, and that includes actor Sir Ian McKellen. He's part of the first group eligible to get the shot, which includes people over 80, healthcare workers, and care home residents. McKellen says he will still wear a mask and practice physical distancing, but said he feels euphoric to get vaccinated.
I am feeling so happy and relieved and optimistic and everything that I haven't been really feeling for a long time now. I couldn't be happier.
The French President Emmanuel Macron is the latest world leader to test positive for the virus. Several other politicians are self-isolating because they'd been in close contact with him. Europe is trying to contain this second wave. Many countries are tightening restrictions over the holidays, but some are giving people a break to gather over Christmas. And public health experts fear that is a big mistake. Redmond Shannon reports.
London is now in the UK's highest lockdown level. It's fed up residents looking ahead to a proposed 5-day Christmas break from restrictions.
I think it's a good idea for people's mental health. I think we need to see our families. It's been a tough year.
But this week, 2 medical journals warned that a holiday easing of rules could have lasting consequences.
We are literally being inundated, and I do not use that word lightly, with reports of hospitals coming pretty close to falling over. The problem will be the sheer number of extra patients with COVID crowding out those with anything other than the most urgent medical need. They will result in a lot of suffering, and in some cases they will result in death.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson resisted opposition calls to review the Christmas reprieve.
That is how, by being sensible and cautious, not by imposing endless lockdowns or cancelling Christmas as he would appear to want to do.
Leaders in Wales and Scotland have pleaded with residents, asking that they try to mix with fewer people for fewer days than the UK's Christmas rules allow.
5 weken in lockdown.
Across Europe, countries like the Netherlands and Germany are also in full lockdown mode. Both nations are allowing 3 days at Christmas where rules will be relaxed. The news that French President Emmanuel Macron has tested positive is another reminder of how the virus cares little for status and how it thrives on human contact. His office says he likely became infected at this summit last week, where social distancing was way down the order of business. A raft of European leaders whom Macron met then and since have had to isolate while waiting for test results. The 42-year-old is said to be tired and has a cough. His wife Brigitte has so far tested negative. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
In a rare move, Sweden's king is sharply criticizing his country's handling of the pandemic. King Carl XVI Gustav says his country failed to save lives with its relaxed approach to COVID-19. It never imposed a full lockdown, relying mainly on its citizens' sense of civic duty to slow the spread. The policy, widely supported by Swedes, is being blamed now for a high death toll among seniors in care homes. The country has reported more than 7,800 deaths, nearly 4 times more than the rest of the Nordic countries combined. Next, the dangerous aftermath after U.S. winter storm.
You're watching Global National.
It is mid-December, so snowstorms are no surprise, but the one hitting the northeastern U.S. is one of the most powerful in years. This is what one New York man found when he opened his garage this morning, a wall of snow. Tens of millions of Americans are under winter weather alerts. In New York City, at least 16 centimeters of snow fell in the last 24 hours. That's a record and is more than New York saw all of last winter. It led to terrible driving conditions and hundreds of car accidents.
You can show me clear from this accident on...
A dash cam caught the moment a Pennsylvania driver lost control on an icy road, narrowly missing several people. At least 3 people have died in accidents in that state. In Maryland, Spirit airline passengers had a scare when their plane skidded off the runway. No one was hurt. More than 1,200 flights, though, have been canceled because of the storm. The severe weather is slowing down holiday deliveries, but officials say it will not disrupt distribution of coronavirus vaccines.
We expect to keep getting the deliveries and keep being able to turn around and get people vaccinated.
At least 8 states have temporarily shut down some COVID-19 testing sites. The weather system has now moved into Atlantic Canada, where snowfall warnings are in place in several areas. The royal family will be celebrating Christmas differently this year, but some traditions are being kept up. The royal Christmas cards are out and the look is casual. Prince Charles and Camilla posed in the garden of Burke Hall, their Scottish estate. Prince William, Kate and their 3 children kept it casual too, posing at their home in Norfolk, where they've spent most of the year. Their youngest, Prince Louis, stealing the show. And that is Global National for this Thursday. I am fortunate to be able to take some time off over the holiday season, and I'm sticking close to home, which makes this little Yorkie happy. To all of you who will work right through the season in healthcare, in long-term care, in grocery stores and restaurants, and doing deliveries, thank you. We can't survive without you. Keep safe, find joy where you can. 2020 is almost over, and I'll see you again in 2021. For now, bye-bye.